Welcome, Anita.
Oh, thank you, Nancy. It's wonderful being here with you.
What a treat. So, as you know, as the event director at Hay House, I have certainly been around the block. I have been out there with the best of them. And I have to tell you that your story, your message is truly one of the most powerful and impactful that I've ever heard. And it has been an honor to travel the world with you. And I just want to dive right in. I would love for you to take us back to February 2nd, 2006.
Oh, wow. Um, uh, I'm just so touched by what you just said. But February 2006, that was the day that should have been my last day alive. I mean, I shouldn't be here today. If the doctors were right, I wouldn't be here. I should have died on that day because on that day, I was in a coma and the doctors had told my family that these were my last hours. And I had end-stage cancer, which I had been struggling with for 4 years. By that point, on February the 2nd, 2006, my organs had shut down, and that's why I'd gone into a coma. I had had I had lymphoma for 4 years, and it had started with tumors on my neck. And over the period of the 4 years, the tumors had spread. Some of them were the size of lemons, and they were from the base of my skull all around my neck, down under my arms, my chest area, and down to my abdomen. Also, my lungs were filled with fluid, and so I had difficulty breathing. And I had these huge open skin lesions where toxins were weeping out through my skin. I was so weak. I weighed about 85 pounds. My muscles were completely deteriorated. In fact, I was so weak, I wasn't even able to hold my head up. I wasn't able to sit up, and my head was always drooping. My neck was like down, and my head was always drooping down. And I wasn't even able to lie flat because of the fluid in my lungs. Every time I lied flat, I would be choking on my own fluid. I was connected to an oxygen tank. I couldn't walk because my muscles were completely gone. And if I had to go anywhere, I was taken on a wheelchair. And on that day, I went into a coma because my organs had finally shut down. They'd finally packed in. And the doctors told my family that these were my final hours of life. But unbeknownst to everybody around me, I was actually aware, even though I was in a coma, I was aware of everything that was happening around me. I was aware of everything the doctors were doing, because when I went into a coma, my husband became distraught and frantic, and the doctors were saying these were my final hours. So they were poking needles and tubes into me. They were putting a food tube down my throat. And I was aware of every single thing they were doing. And not only that, though, but I felt as though I was no longer physically attached to my body. And I felt like I was just completely light and free. And it was just the most, the most amazing thing that I can ever imagine feeling. And the pain was completely gone, the discomfort, the pain. I just felt really incredible. I'd never felt this incredible before. And I felt as though I was like embraced by this feeling of unconditional love. And I use the term unconditional love, but it's not exactly unconditional love, because we use this word love and we kind of overuse it. It's nothing like love that I had ever felt in this physical life before. It was really unconditional in that for the first time, I felt as though I didn't have to do anything to prove myself to deserve being loved. It was like I was loved just because I existed. And it was as though no matter what I had done in my life, it didn't matter. I was loved. I was just loved unconditionally. And it was like for the first time, I could relax and not have to work at being loved or work at being accepted. And it was just the most incredible feeling.
This is such this piece of your story always hooks me in so deep, especially as someone who, and you and I have talked about this, you know, the whole aspect of people pleasing, the whole aspect of putting everyone else before me, and the whole aspect of believing that I'm loved for what I do, not who I am. And then you having this experience in the other realm where you know beyond a shadow of a doubt, you just know viscerally that you are loved for exactly who you are.
Yes, this was the most important thing for me, because this is how I learned from having this experience, that I learned that when we allow ourselves to be loved unconditionally, you know, in that realm, for the first time, I was loved unconditionally. And it was in feeling that I learned how to allow myself to be loved unconditionally when I came back into physical life. And I realized that was the biggest thing that had been missing in my life. Not that love had been missing, but my own allowing of myself to be loved is what was missing in my life.
I'm just taking a moment with that, because that is, I mean, that's everything.
Yeah, because most people believe that we are not loved. But what we need to realize is we are not allowing ourselves to be loved. And that was my biggest lesson.
So much, in so many ways, we are the obstacle to our own receiving.
Yes, exactly right.
I get it.
Yeah. That's it. Oh my gosh. You're bringing tears to my eyes.
I get it. I have chills.
Oh my gosh.
Okay,
Oh my
so
gosh.
go back. You're in the other realm. You're swimming through the other realm.
I'm swimming through the other realm. And then I encounter my father, who he had passed away 10 years prior. And my relationship with my father had been turbulent while I was growing up for many reasons. We clashed on many reasons, particularly because I grew up in a multicultural environment because I grew up in Hong Kong. My parents moved to Hong Kong when I was 2 years old. But my father, we're Indian, and my parents are Hindus, and they held on to their traditional Hindu values and culture. And they wanted me to also hold on to those values, and they wanted me to follow their values. But I didn't. I rebelled against everything that my culture stood for. And so I always felt that I disappointed my father, and I'd always let him down in so many ways. I mean, and he wanted me to have an arranged marriage, and I rebelled against it. Finally, when I gave in, I ended up running away from an arranged marriage, which embarrassed my family, brought shame on my family, and also on the family that I was supposed to marry into. And so that was a huge thing in my community, where I was ostracized. And finally, when I was about to get married to my husband, who I am currently married to, Danny, my father passed away just a few months before my wedding date. And this really pained me, because I felt as though my father had waited my whole life for me to get married. And just before I got married, he passed away. He wasn't there to see my wedding date. When I encountered him in the other realm, I realized that he had been there with me, watching over me, even when I was getting married. And I had always felt that I had never been good enough for him, that I had always let him down. But in the other realm, all I felt from him was pure, unconditional love. And I understood in that realm that when we die, when we leave our bodies behind, we don't actually die. The most important part of us lives on. But what we leave behind is our physical body. But what goes with our physical body is our gender, our race, our culture, our ego, and all these layers and layers of filters that go with all of this. You know, we build up these layers through our lifetime, which goes with being with our gender and being with our particular era and culture in time. And we build up these layers of beliefs and values, and we project and we react and we interact with people through these layers and layers of filters. I realized that when we are without our body, we lose all of this as well. So what's left is this pure essence. It's just this pure essence of who we are, and who we are without all those layers, those layers of fear. Without all of it, who we are is pure love. It's pure God. We can call it what we like. It's pure consciousness, pure love, pure God. That is that unconditional love. It is within all of us. It's that pure essence.
So you're saying that, so when you were there, you realized once you were stripped of everything you actually thought you were.
Yes.
Everything that you identified yourself as. Once you were stripped of all that,
yes.
it was pure essence of love.
Yes.
And that you were in acceptance of yourself in a way you never had been before, it sounds.
Exactly. You're exactly right. You've got it. And so what happens is that when my essence is with my Father's essence, all I feel for him and from him is pure love. And if we all, even as humans, you know, it's like my father and I, it was like we were connected. It was like I understood that we are facets of the same essence, and it's the same essence that we call God. It is within us and it is without us, and it is us as well, because there's no separation. There's no physical body separating us. And if we only realize this, we would realize that underneath all these filters and layers, we actually all are love, and we love each other.
And nothing else really matters.
Exactly. Nothing else really matters. And you know, when we realize this, it becomes much simpler. We don't have to figure out things like, we don't even have to figure out how to love people. We don't have to figure out things like forgiveness, because when you realize that at your essence, you are pure love, and at that person's essence, they are pure love. And when you can connect essence to essence, you understand that everything that person did, even if they hurt you, you understand that everything they did came from their layers and layers of filters, their ego, their fears, their insecurities. So their actions come from all of that. It's not from their essence.
That's something to digest for sure.
Yeah, and then you realize that even when we forgive each other, we're forgiving them for acting out of all those layers. But when you touch essence to essence, there's nothing to forgive. And
then fear is gone, guilt is gone.
Everything is gone.
Resentment is gone.
It's all gone, because all you're left with is pure understanding and compassion. You feel the other person's essence. In that realm, I felt my father's essence, and he felt mine. And all I was left with was understanding of why he had been the way he was, and all he had from me was understanding of why I had been the way I was. There's just pure understanding. There's nothing to forgive. Just as much as I thought I was a victim of my culture, in that realm I understood he was a victim of his culture, doing the best he could with what he knew, with what he had grown up with here in physical life. He thought the most loving thing he could do for me was to arrange a marriage for me, because that's what he had learned. And you get it when you're without all that. You get it. It's like, okay, he wasn't trying to control me. He thought he was loving me.
Well, I'm so touched too by something you said earlier about with your father in particular, but I imagine it's like this with everybody, that if you're out of your physical body, there is no barrier between energies.
Yes.
So it's all one It's truly the non-dual, all-one state of energy.
Yes, exactly. There's no barrier. There's no separation. And that's when you realize that even when you harm another, you're actually harming the self, or you're harming the whole, the one. Yeah. And in fact, I reached a point, actually, what I want to say at this point is that time felt different in that realm. And it was as if time was not linear. It was as if everything was happening at the same time. And so I was perceiving all kinds of things, like I was aware of everything that was happening to my body, what my family was feeling who were around my body, but also I was aware of my father, and I was aware of my best friend who had passed away, and other beings who were around me. But I was aware of my brother, who was at that moment trying to get on a plane in India to reach me before I died. He wanted to get to me while I was still alive. And I remember actually feeling that, oh, I'd better stay alive until he gets to me. And I felt that wherever I put my awareness, there I was. It was like there was no time or space separation between myself and other time and other places. I could be anywhere at any time. So I felt I was even perceiving my past and even other lives, which could be interpreted as past lives, but it felt like they were happening then and there, like simultaneously.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then you also, I've heard you say that you also were able to completely hear what was happening around you.
Yes,
the doctors
Yes, I heard what the doctors were saying, which I later repeated verbatim, which is what shocked everybody. And I told them exactly what they had said. But I also saw my future panning out. I even saw the doctors coming in and telling my family that, oh, we have good news. Her organs are functioning again, as though watching my future. And so, but I reached a point where I felt I had a choice of whether I wanted to come into my body or stay on in that realm. And of course, at first, I didn't want to come back into my body. I felt that that it was just so amazing in that realm, and my body was in so much pain, and my body was dying, and I had been suffering. My family was suffering, taking care of me. I didn't see a single good reason for coming back into my body. But my father impressed upon me that that it wasn't my time, and I still had some gifts waiting for me, and I needed to go back. And it was in that moment that I experienced what I'll call like a state of incredible clarity, where I just understood. I understood why I had the cancer. I understood my purpose. I understood why I had come into this life. And I realized that I was, in fact, we all are, amazing, magnificent, powerful beings. That we don't come here to be weak. We come here to be powerful and to express who we are. And it was the first time I realized that. And I realized that now that I knew the truth of who I am, my cancer would heal if I chose to go back. And it was at that point that my father said, go back and live your life fearlessly. Yeah. And that's when I started to wake up from the coma.
And so when you were still in the other realm, and I've heard you say before that you really understood how every decision, every choice you had made during your life,
yes,
had accumulated to you ending up with cancer.
Yes, I completely understood. In that state of clarity, it was like as though I was looking at my whole life like a tapestry, like a completed tapestry, and how my life, the thread of my life was woven into that tapestry. And I understood how every choice, every decision I had made in every point of time had led me to that day, that moment where I was lying in that hospital bed dying of cancer.
So I know that this is a controversial piece.
Yes. Yes.
And as I'm just listening to you right now, I'm having an awareness about even if you do say every choice, every decision, you understand how it is that you came to have the cancer. Isn't it also about you being brought to the threshold to go and come back to teach what you have to teach? Isn't that what it's about?
Yes, and in fact, it's interesting because on the one hand, I feel if I already knew what I know, I wouldn't have had the cancer.
I get it.
Yeah, and yet I feel I was meant to go through this to come back and teach it.
And I think, the controversial piece is obviously this whole notion of do we cause our own illness?
And that is a controversial piece because I feel that it's not our fault. And that's one thing that I want to actually make clear is that when we say that we create our illness or we cause our own illness, many people feel that it's their fault and they start to blame themselves. And I want to make sure that every single person knows that no, it is not your fault. It was not my fault I got cancer. It's not your fault you got cancer. But what I learned is that the cancer was a gift. And those of you who are dealing with an illness right now, there's two things I want to bring up, actually more than two. But one of them is it's not your fault. The other one is, believe it or not, it's a gift. Even if it doesn't feel like a gift right now, it is a gift. Because one of the biggest lessons I learned is that life is a gift. And every challenge in life is a gift. And people have said to me that my cancer nearly killed me. It must have been miserable. Yes, it was miserable at the time, but it didn't, in fact, but it didn't nearly kill me. It saved my life. I was killing myself before that. I was suppressing who I was. I was treating myself like a doormat. I was making myself small so others could feel big. I was forsaking myself. I was saying no when I meant yes and yes when I meant no. And I was killing myself. And I never allowed myself to be the magnificent soul that I had come here to be. And that is what I ask people with illnesses to do, is be who you are. You are not your illness. Don't make the illness the focal point of who you are, and don't blame yourself for having an illness. And one more thing I want to say here is that particularly people who are on this journey of, we can call it like a journey of self-improvement, self-help, those of us who read a lot of books and go to a lot of seminars, we are the most critical of ourselves because we feel we have learned so much, read so much. We say, I go to all these seminars, I read all these books. I should know better by now. What is it I'm getting wrong? We're like pushing ourselves and we're thinking, I should know it by now. I read all these books. And so I just want to tell you, don't be so hard on yourself. And in fact, it is this self-criticism that you have, this beating yourself up. That is what is the most damaging thing. Blaming yourself if you have an illness or cancer or MS or allergies or whatever you have. We blame ourselves and we say, what am I doing wrong? Stop. Just stop everything. And all you have to do is just say, where am I not loving myself? And that's all you have to ask. Where am I not allowing myself to feel unconditional love for myself? And that is it. That's all.
And so when you came back into your body.
Yes. I started to heal very, very rapidly. Within 4 days, the tumors had shrunk by about 70%. And the doctors were astounded. They didn't even know what to write in my file. And I wanted to sit up. I had been very, very weak, but I started to tell the doctors that you can take the tubes out. I don't need the oxygen tube anymore. You can take out the food tube. I'm ready to eat food again. And so the doctors were being very, very cautious. And then I started repeating the conversations they had. And I would tell my husband, oh, isn't that the doctor that said that I'm not going to make it through the night, that these are my final hours and my organs have now shut down. And my husband said, how did you hear that conversation? He didn't even say it in the room. He said it down the corridor about 40 feet down, and the door was shut. And then even I had trouble trying to understand what was going on, because for the first few days, I felt like I had one foot in each side. I was kind of feeling groggy and trying to make sense of everything. But by about the fourth or fifth day, I started to gain some clarity, and I was telling my family that I know I'm going to be fine. Dad came to me and Dad told me that I had to go back. And my family started to believe me when I was repeating the conversations and when I was telling them everything that was happening. And then the tubes were coming out and the doctors were saying, I don't need the oxygen anymore and I don't need the food tube. And I wanted to sit up and I wanted to talk and I wanted to listen to music. And what happened is that over the next 5 weeks, the doctors were running all these tests. And they did the different biopsies, the lymph node biopsies, the bone marrow biopsy, and they found no trace of cancer. And I just had to do a little bit of physiotherapy to gain my strength back. The skin lesions, which they thought they would need reconstructive surgery for, didn't need surgery. They healed by themselves. And in 5 weeks, they sent me home and they said, I can go home now. And so I went home and in fact, within 2 weeks after going home, I was attending a friend's wedding and drinking champagne and dancing. And I've been cancer-free since, and that was 7 years ago.
Ah, it's miraculous. I'm curious, what was your relationship to or perception of death prior to your near-death experience?
Oh, very fearful. I was fearful not just of death, but I was fearful of life. And I'll tell you, the irony is that when you lose your fear of death, you lose your fear of life as well. So when I say I was fearful of life, I was fearful of everything in life. So I feared death, but everything I did in life, I did so that I could have a good afterlife. So in other words, I thought I was always creating good karma for the afterlife. So everything I would do was from a place of fear of creating a good afterlife. So every decision I had made in my life prior to this near-death experience came from a fear of the consequences. Even when I did things for people, I did it because I feared their reaction. So I would do things so that people would like me. I would do things so that I would be accepted by people. I did things because I feared that people wouldn't like me if I didn't do it. And after the near-death experience, I realized that life is supposed to be joyful, that we are supposed to go and find our joy and do what brings us joy, and that life is a gift. And so now everything I do it because it brings me joy to do it. And I realized that if I had known this, then I never would have got the cancer. But it's interesting, only because it happened to me do I know to teach it, and do I know that other people need to know this.
And exactly what your father said to you, go back and live your life fearlessly.
Yes.
And really live your life. I mean, this is the message for us to live our lives.
Exactly. Live your life fearlessly. And many people say to me, how can I live my life fearlessly? Now, if you are trying to get rid of your fear, all that'll end up happening is that you'll end up focusing on your fear.
Exactly.
Yes. And that's all you'll be focusing on. So what I would rather you do is to transcend your fears, because if you just try and get rid of your fears, all you'll do is you'll be suppressing it and trying to manage it. And that doesn't work, because that makes it worse. You'll be judging yourself every time you feel fearful. What you do is you shift your focus. You shift your focus to that of love, allowing yourself to be loved unconditionally, asking yourself, what can I do today that brings me joy? What can I do today to prove to myself how much I love myself? And people cringe at the thought of loving themselves. They think it's egotistical or narcissistic. On the contrary, those who appear to be the most egotistical are the ones who lack self-love. The ones who love themselves are the happiest, most joyful, most secure people to be around, and they are the most giving and the most generous, because you cannot give love to others if you don't have it for yourself.
And I've heard you talk about love, you know, because it's such an esoteric concept, but you've said, like, what if it was tangible like money?
Yes. And if you were taught from a young age that to give yourself, imagine if you were taught it from a young age to give love to others is selfless, but to give love to yourself is selfish, which most of us believe, and give love a tangible property like money. So imagine if you were giving and giving and giving your money away, but you never give any to yourself. You don't allow yourself to earn any money because you think it's selfish. What would happen? You would lose your home. You would lose everything. You wouldn't have a car. You wouldn't have money to do anything. You would be starving. We do this with love and we don't realize it. It is so important to receive love. Receive it first from yourself, because only when you allow yourself to receive it from yourself will you be able to open the door to receive it from others.
Right, and I mean, we can't expect others to give us something we can't give ourselves.
Exactly. And what happens is that when we give and give and give to others, and then sometimes when we need it, we become so needy. We give and give until we're empty and we're drained, and then we become needy. And when those others we've given to, if they're not giving it to us in the way we want it back, we start to resent them. And what does that mean? That means the love we've been giving them is not unconditional. Whereas if we are allowing ourselves to love ourselves, and if we are allowing ourselves all the time, opening ourselves to love ourselves, and if we are filled, and we are so filled with love that what we are giving others is what is pouring out of us because that's all we have inside, then we don't resent them if they don't give it back, because we are full anyway, and what we're giving them is what's overflowing, is flowing out of us anyway. It's who we are. We are love. So what other people experience from us is our love. And what happens is that they too are then touched to give us love back, because we're kind of filling them up and they're kind of giving it back, and it kind of just keeps going around. We find that when we love ourselves, we find ourselves more surrounded with love as well.
And around this, something that I've heard you say before a few times, and it always intrigues me because it's so simple, and yet for some reason it's still out of grasp for many of us. You have said fear immobilizes you, love keeps you safe.
Yes, many people say to me that, oh, a little bit of fear is good. You know, we need to teach kids to fear things because it keeps them safe. And I don't agree with that, because fear over the years accumulated immobilizes you. And in fact, you teach kids to love themselves and value their lives. That keeps them safe, because when you love yourself, you will not put yourself in the line of danger. You will not do anything that brings danger to you. You will value your life, and you will be careful how you treat yourself. That keeps you a lot safer than fear does.
And a little earlier, you were talking about awareness, and what we focus our attention on is what we draw toward us.
Yes.
And I've seen you do your little flashlight exercise. Can you just sort of, even if we don't have a visual, can you just sort of take us through that in our minds?
Of course I can. So I want you to imagine, this is my near-death state, and I love to use metaphors. So I want you to imagine, if you will, that it's pitch darkness, and you're holding a little flashlight in your hand, and all you can see is what you see through the beam of that one little flashlight that's in your hand. And it's a small flashlight. It's not huge. It's a small flashlight, and it casts a little beam. And outside of that beam, it's just pitch blackness. So there you are flashing your light, and sometimes you're flashing on one thing and sometimes another. And that beam is your life, and everything that you can see if with that beam is what you are aware of right now. You can't be aware of anything else because it's pitch dark outside of that beam. Now imagine one day these huge floodlights go on, and you realize that you are in this huge warehouse, and it's so huge you can't see the ends. The walls are so far away, and the ceiling is really, really high. But you can see rows and rows and rows of shelves, these big shelves, and these shelves are lined with just all kinds of different things, big things, small things, and all kinds of products and things of all different colors and things that you have seen before with your flashlight, but millions of things that you've never seen and you've never even known that they've existed. And there are things of like electronic things and clothes and things you like and things you don't like. And there's food and there's colors you've never known existed and flowers and plants and really things that you never even knew could possibly exist, but they are there. And they are there alongside the things that you knew existed, alongside things that you knew existed but felt were out of reach to you, and also alongside things which were in reach to you because you've seen them, that your flashlight had shone on them. And so these floodlights are on, and you can see all these things all at once, all at the same time. Now the floodlights go off, and you're back to your one flashlight. That's what it's like for me. Having the NDE was like having the floodlights go on and being aware of everything all at the same time. And now, even though the lights have gone back off and I'm back to one flashlight, that flashlight represents my physical life and my awareness and what it's focused on at any time. Even though it can only be focused on a little piece of the warehouse, just a small bit, I am aware that there's so many things that exist there, and they are all within my reach. They are all within your reach. But just because your flashlight hasn't focused on it yet doesn't mean it's not possible. There are so many things that we think is not possible, but they are possible, and they're right there, and they exist alongside the things that we think are possible. So it just depends where your flashlight has focused on. So even if you're focusing with one beam, what happens is many of us get fixated on what our beam is focused on. And we think that that's all there is to reality. We don't realize that there is so much more alongside, but it's just that we've only focused on what that beam is flashing on. Now, let me see if I can try this exercise with you, even though you're not in the room, same room with me. I want everybody who's listening to just play along with me. I want you to look around the room that you're sitting in. Just play along with me and look around the room that you're sitting in. And I want you to find all the things in the room that are red in color, and make a mental note. Try and memorize, commit to your memory as many of the red things in the room that you're sitting in, and just keep looking around, looking around. Okay, now I want you to close your eyes. Keep them closed, And now I want you to recall as many things in the room as possible that are blue. Okay, now open your eyes and look around and see how many blue things you've missed. And the reason is because you weren't focused on it. What you were doing was that your flashlight was focused on the red things, and that's all you noticed. And this is what we do in life. I mean, have you ever noticed that when you buy a car, a new car, you suddenly see almost everybody's driving the same car as you, and you never noticed them the day before you bought that car? It's because that's where your awareness has gone. And what I'd like to add here is that imagine, just think about this. Think of all the awareness that we are giving cancer today. Think of all the advertisements on cancer awareness. Think of all the billions of dollars we are pouring into cancer awareness, and all the people that are being told about cancer awareness, and all the billboards and TV ads and bumper stickers and campaigns. Now, just imagine this. Imagine if all of that was for wellness awareness. Think about what we would see.
What a different world we'd live in.
What a different world we'd live in. Exactly. All those billions of dollars if they went into wellness awareness.
So I have to ask you, Anita.
Yes.
So are you, Anita, able to stay in this state of awareness? Now that, sort of that you're back and living in the world of among humans. Do you get tripped up? Do you hit obstacles? Do you still have to hit a point where you're like, oh yeah. And so it's really about the recovery time for you getting quicker.
Yes, I still hit obstacles, and I think that's just part of being in physical life. So I definitely hit obstacles, but I think that the way I react to them or respond to them is very different than how I used to respond to them. One of the biggest things is I don't blame myself anymore. I don't criticize myself, and I don't beat myself up anymore. I'm a lot kinder to myself, even when I hit obstacles. And that's a big one.
And do you feel like that went away instantaneously with your NDE? Or was it something that when you came back into physical form, you still had to work with?
It went away instantaneously with the NDE. And so I think I felt this incredible euphoria and love and gratitude and appreciation for myself and for life from the moment I came back. But I can see how life itself and the way that we as a race and a culture have set up life, I can see how it erodes that, or how it can erode that from you. We are faced with it perpetually. So I can see how consciously I have to maintain that state that I came back with. And I understand that we are born with the same state that I came back with from my NDE, that euphoria, that knowing that I am deserving, worthy, lovable. I also can see how we are born with that state, but how it erodes away with the kind of culture and social environment we've set up for ourselves.
Something so important that you just said about it's your reactions that have changed.
Yes.
And I think that that's a critical piece of this for all of us. Understanding that we can be conscious about making certain choices and decisions in the way that we react.
Yes. And I think that is really, really important. And I think that the main thing, the biggest thing that has changed my reaction is firstly realizing that it's not my fault, or not blaming myself, or not criticizing myself. And so this is one of the things I like to encourage people to do, is that when you run into an obstacle, we tend to add to the problem by beating ourselves up. And so that's the thing that I want to ask people to watch. Watch that inner voice. What are you saying to yourself? Because problems are always going to come our way. Things are always going to happen. That's just part of life. And so the first thing is to stop beating yourself up. And here's an exercise that I like to tell people to do. Something that I've done frequently in workshops is that I'll ask people to write down on a sheet of paper all the things that they don't like about themselves, that they wish that they would change, that they could change. And what ends up happening is people have lists as long as their arm. In fact, they end up asking for more paper. But when I ask them to write all the things they love about themselves, some people are hard pressed to come up with 2 or 3. So what I will ask you to do, even as a home exercise for those who are listening, is forget about writing anything that you don't like about yourself or that you wish you could change. Stop thinking along those lines. Stop thinking along the lines that you need help or you need change or that you're imperfect. But in fact, come up with 5 compliments for yourself every single day. And I'm going to make it really hard for you. I want you to come up with 5 different ones each day and write them down, like maybe in a journal or something. And they could be anything. It could be the way you handled a situation on that day. It could be that you handled it really well. It could be something nice you did for someone. It could be maybe you lost a little bit of weight, or, it could really be anything. Compliment yourself on anything. But it's about retraining your mind to think differently about yourself. We are very quick to criticize ourselves, but we never, ever compliment ourselves. So I would like people to start retraining their minds and start complimenting themselves. Because, we keep saying about how, we need to stop judging other people. We need to be less judgmental. But in actuality, we are only judgmental of others because we're judgmental of ourselves. The more judgmental you are of yourself, the more judgmental you are of others. The more compassionate you are towards yourself, the more compassionate you will be towards others. And it just seems to work that way. So let's start with training ourselves to be compassionate and judgmental towards ourselves. And so if you can keep a journal where you just start to learn by writing 5 compliments about yourself every day, you will start to realize that there's a lot of good stuff in there. There's a lot of good that you do. There's a lot of good things you are. And you need to know that about yourself.
I am so excited about this. I'm starting this today.
Yay!
I really am. I love this.
Oh, goody. Oh, goody.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I'm wondering, I know that I've heard you talk before that when you came back into your physical body, that your intuition was heightened.
Yes.
And I'm also curious, because I haven't heard you speak about this, and maybe you have. Have you had any communication with your father or your best friend since you've been back here?
Yes, in fact, I feel that they're communicating with me all the time. I feel guided all the time. And the thing is, I believe that all of us are guided, but we don't listen to it because we have become very, very cerebral, all of us. We think too much. We're too highly in our brain. And so we block out this part of us. Now, if you watch little children, they're much more intuitive than adults are. It's like we have set up an education system to condition this out of us. And I don't know why we've done it, because if you look at animals, they've still got it because they don't have that same education system that we do. So when I was in the other realm, I understood what it was to look for, what it was to listen out for. And I realized that we all have it, but we've just had it conditioned out of us. And so we are actually all guided all the time. And the best way to listen to that guidance is to quieten your mind. Now, we talk about meditation. Like, okay, I also talk about meditation. And most of us are too cerebral and too much in our mind to really get meditation right. And this is the problem. And this is why we are always encouraged to spend whatever it is, 20 minutes a day or 1 hour a day in meditation. In actuality, you can live your whole life in meditation. And it doesn't mean renouncing the material world. You can still be very engaged and very much part of your life and your work and follow your dream and your passion. But you can do it in a way where you are so present that you are feeling guided all the time. In fact, you are guided all the time. And so your life becomes the meditation, not just 20 minutes a day or 3 times a week.
And I've also heard you speak about, and I think this is an important part for everyone who's listening. We here in the physical state mourn the loss of those who go to the other realm.
Yes. And we don't need to. I mean, we can do it for ourselves. And so what I want people to know is that when we are mourning other people, sometimes we are also confused as to the type of service we need to have for them. And we get advice that we need to do this for the deceased and we need to do that. What I want people to know is that you don't need to do anything for the deceased. They are fine. They are more than fine. They are fantastic. They are free. They are released. They're happy. They're there. They're watching over you. And nothing will make them happier than to see you happy. They want you to be happy. Life is a gift. And even if they're not here, they want you to continue living your life as though it's a gift. And if you mourn them for your own healing. There is nothing you need to do for them. And if you have lost a loved one, for example, a partner, it is not going to upset them if you find love again. Don't feel guilty if you find love again or if you find happiness or joy again. And even if you have lost a young person, a child, of course you will feel pain and you will mourn them. By all means do that. But do know that they're still there, they are fine, and they are still with you. And nobody goes before their time. Whatever time they were here was perfect for them. And whatever time you had with them was their gift to you. And treat it that way. And no matter whatever circumstances that people left with whether it is through an accident, a sudden death, a prolonged illness, or even if it is by suicide, nobody goes before their time. And don't feel guilty about anything. If you're still holding on to something like guilt or something you feel of conversations unsaid or the circumstances under which somebody left, you can talk to them. They can hear you. Just talk to them as though they're there. And bring about closure and healing for yourself. Do not worry about them because they are stripped of their ego and all those layers and filters that you had to deal with when they were present and when they were physically alive. So just know that all they are feeling for you is pure, unconditional love, compassion, empathy. That's all they have for you. So do whatever it takes to bring about your own healing and your own release of guilt, because they are not feeling that for you.
Thank you for sharing that. And so, Anita, for you, for your whole near-death experience in being in the other realm, coming back, feeling like you had a foot in both worlds for a little bit, the choice point to come back, what is the most significant message for us?
The biggest message is for you to just be who you are. Be as you can be, because that's why you're here. That's why you've come here, to express your magnificence and to shine your light as brightly as you can. Don't deprive the universe or the world of who you came here to be. And that is your only purpose.
Beautiful. What else could there be? I know your life has changed so drastically, since writing the book and, all this, whirlwind of travel and exposure and being with people. What are you most passionate about these days? What's most alive in you in your life these days?
Oh, what I love is I cannot believe how much I am enjoying speaking to people in person. I mean, I was never a public speaker before, ever. I never knew I could speak publicly. I never knew I could speak to big audiences. And it just brings me alive to be able to speak to all these people and for people to say, oh my God, for people to say that my message helped them. And that's just, it just blows me away. And just to feel that presence of being in the presence of other people and the energy in a room full of people, that is what really makes me feel alive. I love it.
And what do you do in your day? What are your personal practices? What are the non-negotiables?
Okay, the non-negotiables is I love to be in nature, that is for sure. I love to be in big open spaces and by the sea. One non-negotiable is that I always have to have my home has to be based by the sea, and that just recharges my batteries. I can't do what I do if I didn't have if I wasn't able to look at the sea or go to the sea, ocean, like frequently. When I say frequently, I mean like at least every couple of weeks, because when I'm traveling, sometimes it's not always easy, but yeah, at least every couple of weeks. So that's like a non-negotiable to recharge my batteries. And I love music. I just have to listen to my music. That's another, that really, really gets me centered. And I need to also have a lot of space and time. It's interesting, you know, it's like the yin and yang of life. It creates contrast. The more I'm out there in public, the more I feel I'm needing my alone time more than ever before. I need that alone time to get centered.
And I imagine your life must just feel, I mean, it must just be before and after. I mean, it just must be like two completely different lives. Like you've had a past life inside of this lifetime.
Yes. Oh my God. You cannot get, it's like I'm two different people. It's like two completely different lives. It just blows me away. It's like a dream. I could not have scripted this better. Mm-hmm. And the thing is, what I believe is that this is what I'm meant to do. And my message for other people is you don't have to pursue your life. You don't have to pursue your passion. You just have to be who you are and allow it to unfold. The more you go chasing and pursuing it, the more you're sending yourself the message that it's out of reach and therefore you have to chase it.
And I'm so inspired listening to you right now, even just thinking there are so many ways in which we can allow ourselves to be reborn, renewed. We don't have to go through a near-death experience.
No, and that is the reason for me sharing my message. The biggest reason is because I don't want people to have to suffer the way I did. Don't go through what I did. And, you know, and I want people to know that life is a gift, because the other thing is people will say that, oh, if it's so beautiful in the other realm, why don't I just end my life early? No, don't do that, because even if you are suffering right now, there is a gift in it. Life is a gift. It's unfortunate that only when we lose something do we realize the value of it. I did lose my life for a little bit. And that's when I realized the value of it. There is a reason why you are here. And it is a gift. See the gift in it.
Thank you for sharing your magnificence with all of us.
Oh, thank you, Nancy. You are a beautiful soul. Thank you.